I'd like to call the meeting of the Willits City Council, June 10th, 2020 meeting to order. And Kat, to lead us with the pledge and then roll call.
Yes. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call. Councilmember Connie?
Present.
Rodriguez?
Present.
Strong?
Here.
Stranske?
Yes.
Mayor Gonzalez?
Here. All right. I'll read. Due to the provisions of the Governor's Executive Orders N2520, which suspend certain requirements of the Brown Act and the order of the Health Officer of the County of Mendocino to shelter in place, to minimize the spread of COVID-19, the City Council members will be participating by teleconference in the meeting of June 10, 2020. And public communication. Actually, do I have the right one here? Yeah, public communication. The Council welcomes participation in its meeting. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes per person so that everyone may be given an opportunity to be heard. Expedite matters and avoid repetition whenever any group of persons wishes to address the Council on the same subject matter. The Mayor may request that a spokesperson be chosen by the group. This item is limited to matters under the jurisdiction of the City Council which are not on the posted agenda. Public criticism of the City Council, Commission, boards, and agencies will not be prohibited. However, no action shall be taken. At this point, do I have any members of the public that would like to speak to something that is not on the agenda? Next, state your name. Okay. I guess I will close public communication, and now we're on to item 3, public matters.
Jerry, can I ask a quick question?
All right. What's that?
Somebody.
What?
May I ask a question? This is Greta.
Go ahead.
We received, I believe all the council members received an email from a member of the public regarding an issue that was not on the agenda. I wondered if that would be read into the record or somehow acknowledged.
Yeah, I guess it's Kathy. I'm trying to find it if I got it.
So am I.
From John Sherman?
Yes.
Yeah, John Sherman. Oh, okay. Kathy, do you have that handy?
I am. It says, Council members, I am frustrated with the lack of access to city government at this point. I don't feel that telephone meetings give the public the opportunity to participate adequately at this crucial time in the history of the future of Willits. There is plenty of room in the community center with proper spacing of chairs and mandatory masks. With the events of the last 3 months, I think the public needs to communicate with its community leaders directly. Thank you, John Sherman.
Okay. Thank you, Greta, for bringing that up. Thank you. Reached out to Chuck, but I hadn't heard from him, so. Okay. So at this point...
This is Madge, could I ask if we need to agendize that, or can that just be...
I can certainly speak to that, and we can talk about it during there is a council item for open discussion on COVID-19, and I think that would be appropriate.
Okay, great.
Okay. All right. So we are at public matters, and we have a proclamation designating Western Wear Days, June 26th through July 5th, 2020. I'm going to go ahead and read the proclamation for the record. A proclamation of the Willits City Council designating Willits Western Wear Days, 94th anniversary, June 26th through July 5th, 2020. Whereas Willits Frontier Days is the oldest continuous rodeo in the state of California, and this year's theme, No Place Like Home, marks the 94th anniversary of the Willits Frontier Days, which has drawn people. Hey, folks, if you can mute your line. All right. Which has drawn people from all over to come and not only celebrate Independence Day, but to celebrate our community. And this year, whereas this year, 2020, while we are unable to gather because we are protecting our community from COVID-19, we still want to celebrate Frontier Days by encouraging people to wear Western wear while keeping in our hearts that there is no place like home. And whereas this event is run solely by volunteers, with so many hours dedicated to putting together this traditional event, and whereas this annual community event instills great pride in all of us who call Willits home, past and present. Now, therefore, I, Gerardo Gonzalez, Mayor of the City of Willits, along with Vice Mayor Mary Stranske, Council Members Matt Strong, Sabrina Rodriguez, and Greta Connie, do hereby proclaim June 26th through July 5th, 2020 as Western Wear Day in the City of Willits, and encourage all who enter our community to join us in the rodeo spirit by wearing Western apparel. And in witness whereof I have Aaron hereunto set my hand and cause the seal of the City of Willits to be effective on this 10th day of June 2020. Signed the Mayor Gonzalez. So I don't know if there's anybody from Frontier Days present online.
Willits Frontier Days would like to thank the Mayor and the City Council for the proclamation, and we hope to see you all out there in your rainbows and your Western shirts.
Wearing our masks, right? Thank you very much. All right. Now, at this point, we're on item 4, Enactment of Ordinances. Item A, discussion and possible adoption of urgency ordinance establishing administrative penalties for violation of the Mendocino County Public Health Officer's orders pertaining to the coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic. Jim, is this going to be yours? Jim. Jim? Jim?
I wonder if mine is kind of clearer than yours.
Jim?
What's my phone?
Hello, can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Jim, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. So, we had a discussion about the possibility of enacting this urgency ordinance, which would allow issuance of administrative citations to persons who violate the county health officer's orders. There's a lengthy discussion about...
Jim, can I interrupt you for a minute?
What's that?
It's like you're coming in and out. It's like you're talking in another room. It's like you got clearer than you didn't. So I only caught part of it.
Am I coming through better now?
It's not a very good sound.
Hello?
Yes, that was good.
Okay, is this better?
Much better.
Okay, sorry about
Yes.
that. So I was saying that on the last meeting of May 27, this item was on the agenda, and there was lengthy discussion about the possibility of adopting an urgency ordinance that would authorize the city to administer citations with monetary citation penalties for persons who violate the county health officer's orders. So the council discussed it, took no action, and tabled it, and it's on your agenda again at this time. So, in summary, this ordinance is what's known as an urgency ordinance, which means if adopted, which would require 4 out of 5 votes at least to adopt it, it would take place immediately, as opposed to ordinances that typically require 2 different readings and take place 30 days after adoption. The purpose of this order, and by the way, this ordinance is virtually identical to the county Mendocino's administrative penalty ordinance, as well as cities of Fort Bragg and Ukiah. And the purpose is to deter people from violating county health department orders, and to encourage social distancing and to keep people safe. The only difference between the ordinance that's in front of you and those passed by the county and the other cities in the county is that we've added a new category called non-compliant mass gatherings. And what that means is any group activity involving an assemblage of persons that would be in violation of the health officer's orders is a unpermitted or non-compliant mass gathering. And it's my information that I think it's generally known publicly that mass gatherings pose one of the most serious risks for the spread of the virus. And consequently, we are proposing that a violation which involves a mass gathering could result in a penalty of as much as $10,000. It would be a citation issued by the enforcement officer, and then the way I've written this is that the city council will then have to review the amount of the penalty and either ratify it or make some adjustment to it, either lower it or not increase it beyond $10,000. The other types of violations are violations by individuals and violations by businesses. So an individual violation would have rather low monetary fines. I believe it's $25 for the first offense and $50, and then $100 for the third, something like that. And a business violation would be more substantial. And so that is the process in a nutshell. It's meant to be enforced by city staff as opposed to the police department. It would be like a code enforcement issue. And the draft ordinance provides that the enforcement officer has authority to either issue a citation, which carries a monetary fine, or issue a notice of violation, which basically is a warning that if you do not abate the nuisance in 24 hours, you will be served with a citation. So it gives discretion to the enforcement officer to warn people, to ask that they take care of the problem and comply with the orders, or to issue a citation. There is a review and appeal process that I won't go into unless there are questions. And that's basically my summary of what the ordinance provides.
I would like to just add one thing. I know that Jim had asked me to ask Dr. Doohan regarding the definition of a mass gathering, and I did get some clarification today on that. The governor's order is very specific that mass gatherings at this point are still prohibited completely. We are under a shelter-in-place order. There are exceptions for protests and religious gatherings of up to 100 people with social distancing, but any mass gathering is at this time unlawful under the governor's order, and the county order actually just follows the governor's order, but this is actually the state order. There are also exceptions for stable work groups of 12 and under, or children's recreational groups, and that is what the governor's order says, according to Dr. Doohan, and that is the definition of a mass gathering.
Thank you, Stephanie. At this point, I was going to... Stephanie, do you want to say something else? Nope. Okay. At this point, I was going to speak to the council members before I open it up to the public.
So, this is Madge. I have a clarification question. Jim just said that the determination of the staff person who might issue a citation is appealable to the city council, and I'm not seeing that in section 14, and then section 15 was possible judicial review, but I don't see it written in there that it's could be brought
If I could
to the council.
respond to that, in the section that defines mass gatherings, excuse me. So there's text in the draft ordinance that provides that if a code enforcement officer issues a citation for a mass gathering in an amount that could be up to $10,000, that fine must be ratified or adjusted by the city council as they deem appropriate. So if, for example, there's something that appears to be very, very threatening and to the community, and an officer issues a $10,000 citation, for that citation to go into effect, the council would first review it and either lower it or adjust it. I thought it was important to do that. Authorizing an officer to issue a $10,000 fine seems like that should have some review by the council.
Okay, so it's only the higher level of fine that is appealable, and if you can point that out, I just couldn't find it clear in the language.
This is Larry. I'd like to say something.
Who is this Jim? Is he like a city worker?
Larry, go ahead. Everybody else, if you could mute your line.
Okay, I've got a lot of calls for the last couple of days, and the businesses, this is something that is just going to really curtail our businesses in our community. And we're not talking about mass gatherings, we're talking about people coming into their business without a mask on, and they're supposed to be the policeman and tell them that they have to have a mask, and people get excited, they have a mask. And these are things that are not in this that we need to really work out, and I think that this is a really important part to anything that is going to work for the city of Willits. And I know it works for you, Kai, and for the county and for Fort Bragg and whatever, but I feel that we're really unique because our business community is on a thread, and we're going to have to, where a person can come into a business and without a mask and do their business and go on about their own business, and they might mention to them that they needed a mask or whatever, but you just can't keep throwing people out of your business because they don't have a mask on, and that's my shot on this whole thing. And I've really got a lot of feedback from a lot of people in the community, and I got all of the input from that I don't have email, and so I got it from the city, all the emails, and this is one thing that is really hurting the people in the Willits community. Thank you.
It's hurting them?
Okay. So I've heard from Matt, I've heard from Larry. Sabrina?
Yes, Chair. I'm glad to hear that Larry has changed his mind. That's very hopeful. So I'm glad to hear that. I have quite a few things. I'm concerned that the governor's orders are constantly changing. And again, as I stated in the last meeting, and I believe the meeting this urgency order ordinance is necessary. That is the COVID count in comparison to our county's population. That we don't warrant having an urgency to penalize our businesses, our individuals, and also I don't see the urgency in that. We were asked to flatten the curve, and there some restrictions on members of our community and businesses for more than almost 3 months. Yeah, not quite 3 months. But the point is,
Why bother?
the other thing is that most people are generally compliant, and I've received an enormous amount of emails, phone conversations, text, and I know that that's in large part because of the fact that Greta and I have put it out to the community, and I share John Sherman's concerns that the public isn't able to always hear what's going on, and that's very concerning. Somebody else is talking on the line. I feel like
everybody, can you mute Sabrina, hold on a second. Everybody, can you mute your line? Sabrina's being interrupted because whoever's in the background hasn't muted their line. Go ahead, Sabrina, I'm sorry.
That's okay, thank you. Some concerns that have been expressed is, for example, if you're having a family gathering and it's not your immediate family unit, or you have more than 12 people, this is essentially a mass gathering. That's of concern. And then, like I said, the governor's orders are constantly changing. So by the time this ordinance comes into place, it could already change again. The community, I saw well over 400 comments on social media alone, as well as emails. I've been inundated with phone calls, and I don't mean just in the last 72 hours since the information became widely available to the public. Even before that, as I stated at the previous meetings, this isn't something, I'm a business owner, and I'm not in support of this. I think that right now we have a situation where, for multiple reasons, people are feeling isolated. They feel like government's not working for them, and this is just the wrong time to try and pass an urgency ordinance that punishes the public. But asking businesses to enforce the mask, I think that this ordinance puts businesses in a very hard spot. We're asking that we want the tax revenue from small businesses, but we're adding more layers of governance on them and putting them potentially in situations where they could be sued. If somebody walks into my business and I don't give them service because they're not wearing a mask, or I ask them about their health issues, I believe that there's a potential for a lawsuit as a business owner there, and that concerns me. And then I've also heard from people who have breathing issues, whether you have asthma or emphysema. Putting on a mask is very dangerous, and some people are putting them on because they worry about the risk of the dirty look to the potential for abuse or threats in the store. It's just creating a very hostile environment, and I would hate to see us add to that hostile environment by creating an ordinance that penalizes our citizens who, in general, are trying to do the right thing. And again, as I stated before, that I was concerned about the lack of education. The county's rules are constantly changing. There's lots of room for interpretation for businesses who are trying to figure them out. And the county and the city has admitted that they don't have the resources to educate the public or the businesses, and the county has done very little to educate other than to post what the public health orders are. So that's an issue. Anyway, I just want to again state that I'm not at all in support of this. I heard from people. I respect their opinion. There were some that did express their concerns about safety in our community, and I did hear them. I appreciate that. But by far, 90% of the people that I spoke to, and I spoke to a lot of people, are not in support of this. And we are the elected officials who are supposed to be speaking for that.
Does it mean 150? Does it mean 25?
She said 400.
400?
Please mute your line.
In closing, I just want to state that I'm not in support of this, and I'm very worried about this. I've been reached out to by several businesses, particularly this last week, who are fearful. They're considering closing their businesses and moving elsewhere because they don't feel like they're supported in their community when they see an ordinance like this, which is one more step to penalize them. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
There's somebody on here that's just like doesn't have that.
It's very frustrating that somebody's talking. You can hear them in the kitchen. Very business and
remind the public that they will have a chance to speak and ask questions, but not while someone is speaking, so they have to be mute or quiet.
Okay, looks like somebody not muting. I think this is one of the reasons we probably want to revisit this format. We need to have the ability to shut folks down until we're ready for the public comment. Okay, Greta, go ahead. Your turn.
Oh, this is Greta. I just want to say to anybody who is listening who has called into this line, please mute your phones. The feedback is very loud. It makes it difficult for council members to hear one another and to hear you when you get your turn to speak. Thank you. I just want to say that I feel like I have made my views on this ordinance clear over the last couple of meetings. I do want to echo what Larry and Sabrina have said. I also have received an onslaught of calls, messages, emails from people in the community, by and large, the vast majority of whom are against the ordinance. I do want to mention that those in favor of the ordinance are in favor because they feel that the city needs to have a consistent message reminding the public how important it is to practice social distancing, proper sanitation, and wearing your mask when you are around others and can't maintain your physical distance. There are many in our community who are immunocompromised and are very concerned about their health, and they do have the right to be able to go into the public sphere and feel safe. So we all need to do our part to just be sympathetic toward one another and help each other through this. That being said, I don't think threatening our community with a fine is the message that we really want to send right now. We are in a really hard place, and we need to pull together, not be separating from one another. So I feel strongly this is not the right ordinance at this time. Thank you.
Okay, at this point, I'm going to reserve my comments till later, but I'm going to open it up to the public. If someone from the public would like to speak on this, I need you to state your name, and then I'll recognize you. John Sherman. Hello, John Sherman. Go ahead.
Yes. Hi. Good evening, Mayor and council members. Appreciate you holding this meeting for us. I just want to say I support this urgency ordinance, and I don't want to repeat everything, but the support. I'm getting an echo and feel on my end.
He does support the ordinance?
Yeah.
Is he calling in then?
Yeah. Can I? Once she asks the question. Mayor Gonzalez, do I have the floor?
Yeah. You have the floor, and folks, can you please mute your line?
You guys are saying to mute your lines, but I suspect people don't know how to mute their lines.
Stephanie, could you repeat the instructions on muting lines?
Oh, I had to unmute first. Yes, to mute your lines, please press *6, and that will mute your lines. And when you want to speak, press *6 again, and you will be unmuted. Thank you.
Thank you. John, go ahead and finish.
John, will you start over, please?
Essentially, I don't want to repeat everything said, but Councilman Stranske and Rodriguez and Connie all expressed my feelings very clearly. I'm strongly not in support of this for a number of reasons. Essentially, I think the community has done a great job, and we should be encouraging them to continue, not threatening them with a stick. The other thing is, I just think this is Willits, and we're a unique community, and we have unique conditions, and we should consider those conditions. And part of that is that our community is doing a good job, and we really don't have the kind of threat that the governor is considering when he's making his, or even that the county health officer is. We're an autonomous city, and we should take advantage of that and do what's right for us. Thank you very much. I just think our business community is really struggling. They're trying hard, and they need encouragement. Thank you.
Thank you, John. All right, would anybody else like to speak onto this subject? And if so, state your name. And once I recognize you, everybody else will continue meeting.
Andrew Hosford.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Thank you. I just wanted to, for you guys to hear firsthand from somebody that's operating a business in the city of Willits, with the challenges that we do experience with the health ordinance, and we are doing the best that we can, and to potentially have an additional regulation on top of the ever-changing regulations is just disheartening, and it would be extremely challenging with our already stressed employees and public members. We're trying to follow the health ordinance to a T, and going out of our way to encourage the public to do the same as they interact with our employees. And that results in, some members of the public don't want to follow it, and we try not to, ruin that relationship with that potential customer, but it has happened multiple times. And it gets really challenging. And then on top of that, we end up, we leave ourselves open. If an employee is off in a corner and they take their mask off to get some fresh air or to breathe without, constriction, that leaves us potentially up for somebody to take a picture or something, and then we're in this violation concern. And I don't really see the necessity of it. We're not in a community that has significant spread of COVID. Mendocino County and particularly Willits, there's been no community spread in Willits. And so I think that this ordinance is really unnecessary. And particularly as I've gone into the local businesses, as a consumer myself, I'm experiencing pretty much everyone following the ordinance. And so I don't see where this urgency is needed. I would ask you if any of the council members have, for a whole 8-hour or 10-hour period, worn a mask and laboriously worked while communicating with customers and communicating with fellow employees. It's extremely challenging, and our employees have done this day in and day out for months, and they know that there's months to come of it, and they're working their butts off, trying their hardest to take care of our community members. And to have something like this instilled is just, I think it's the wrong thing to do with our already stressed community members. So I strongly encourage you guys to not pass this ordinance because it's unneeded. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. All right, anybody else from the public that would like to speak? And if so, state your name.
I'm Judy Burgess.
Go ahead, Judy.
I'm a retired occupational therapist and have spent my time in hospitals and nursing homes covered for 8 hours a day wearing masks when I'm in an isolation situation. And it's not comfortable. But it's also not something that I would take off in the presence of COVID. Anyway, I'm a psychiatric trained therapist, and when I was working with adolescents and adults, their responses are best when clear and simple directions are given, with clear and consequences are given, and with surveillance and monitoring to assure fair enactment of rules. That's one of the basic tenets of adolescent psych, of getting people used to asking for waivers if they need waivers for things like that. So I think that there needs to be consequences for not following the rules with repeated increased failure to stand firm for the rules. I have the experience of shopping in Safeway and in grocery outlet and in Village Market. This market none of their staff ever have a mask on. And grocery outlet, all of the masks were being worn over their mouths and not over their noses. And one person stocking shelf and had no mask on and not even a mask around his neck. Safeway, they wear their masks over their mouth and not over their noses. I'm just warning people to really clean the items you buy. It's the only 2 grocery stores that we have in Willits. Also, we've only tested 5,195 people in the county. How many have we tested in Willits? We don't know if we're at risk because the silent carriers. I had an opportunity today to put a call into the KZYX update and ask Dr. Drew Colfax and Dr. J.J. Allende from the UBMC emergency room their opinion on consequences for failure to follow the rules. And they said they know that they get a lot of pushback about wearing masks from the people. But they both said, and you can listen to this on KZYX and Z, 3 o'clock today, that for people who repeatedly fail to meet the rules, there should be some consequences and some monetary consequences. And Dr. Colfax said it was like a restaurant that had a foodborne poisoning, that they get surveillance, get reported, and they close the businesses. And it's utterly ridiculous to have public health rules that are not monitored or surveilled. Said it's like having a fox watch the hen house. You know, it's just irresponsible and
Excuse me, Judy,
to the
it's
health.
time.
Yep, thank you, Judy. I think they called time on you. So you come down as being for the ordinance. That's somewhere good. Do I have any other members of the public who would like to speak? And if so, state your name.
Hi, my name is Angela Tompkins. I don't know if you can hear me.
Angela, your last name is what?
Tompkins. It's Tompkins.
Thank you very much. Go ahead. You have the floor.
I'm saying that I'm against this ordinance because Willits is a different type of town than Ukiah and Fort Bragg. They just released the Mendocino County statistics today, and only 7 were from the northern part of the county, which included Willits, Laytonville, Leggett, Covelo, and etc. out of the 36 total cases here in Mendocino County. When I go into small businesses or I go into Safeway, I see a lot of people who are abiding by the state ordinances and the county ordinances by wearing the face mask covering. A lot of people too are starting to wear gloves. I understand that some people don't put it around their noses, but I don't really see, like I said, by these statistics, that we have a huge community spread versus the Ukiah Valley area has 27 people out of the 36 cases that became positive with COVID. And I know a lot of the cases in the northern county were from people who were going out of the community and returning home and giving it to their families. I believe that this would create a huge negative impact on our community when we really need to come together. So I would be against it.
All right, thank you very much. Do I have any other members of the public that would like to speak? And if so, state your name. Okay. Last chance? Okay, I guess I'll bring it back up. So, at this point, I'm closing public comment. And thank you for those folks that spoke. I guess I, like all the other council members, have gotten emails and folks out there. And one of the things that I wanted to put out first of all is that I did speak with Frontier Days, and they wanted to get it on the record that they, as a nonprofit group, are not political, and therefore they are not taking a stand on it. Individually, members may feel a certain way, but I wanted to kind of throw that out when I spoke with them, that they wanted to make sure they got on the record that they were neither against nor for it because they're not a political group. And so I wanted to get that aspect out. Other thing, I've been contacted by both folks for and against. Some folks flat out, when I called a lot of folks back, and some told me they don't like wearing masks. They flat out admitted they don't wear them. Other folks felt kind of like Mr. Hosford said, they're trying their best, they're doing what they can, etc. I've heard that. I heard from some folks, and actually I've talked to some folks at businesses that feel like they can't speak up because they don't feel their employers are taking it seriously. I think everybody that I talked to in that realm said that when this all first hit, everybody was pretty good about wearing their masks, and there was some level of urgency. And then as things began to open up on the county level, it seemed more like masks were more optional in most cases, they felt. And there's still a lot of folks out there, both young and old, that are kind of scared about this. So I see those points. I see the other ones. I think if we were talking about something like banning satellite dishes, I could be cavalier towards it, but I just kind of wanted to throw that out that I had gone out. I don't engage in Facebook. I'll be honest with you, there's a lot of negativity out there. There's a lot of positive out there. There's also a lot of negativity. I do have enough folks in town that give me calls and tell me when things are circulating, and I do seek people out, and I've always felt I'm a people person, and I like to chat with folks, and I don't mind giving them a phone call if they're willing to take my call. And so I feel I can be out there as accessible as the next person. So I kind of wanted to throw that out there for those folks that I do email. I get voicemails at the city, and I call people back. So if you ever want to get a hold of me, that's that. So at this point, I'll either look for a motion or...
This is Madge. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, Madge.
Okay, I had tried to mute, but I apparently am not able to mute. So I wanted to comment. Before, I just asked a clarifying question, but I have been paying... Can I comment now?
Oh, go ahead, Madge. Okay.
The phone is rather frustrating because any little noise out there interrupts. Okay, so I've been paying a lot of attention to the comments, and I want to first of all put out there that I think all of the council members and all of the city staff are very mindful and appreciative of the business community, and we really have no intention of doing things that are going to hurt our small, especially our mom and pop stores, but all of our stores. That is the community, and it's very, very important to all of us. So I don't want to do anything that is going to be punitive of our businesses that are in good faith, trying to follow the rules and doing the very best they can. And it's true that the rules have been changing, and it's a bit of a challenge. And also that they aren't necessarily able to control the behavior of all of their patrons. But I do think it is really important at the same time that we not let our guard down, because although it is true that right now Willits doesn't have a reported case, it's all around us. It's in Ukiah, it's in Redwood Valley, it's in Covelo, and one store, just like the one church where only 3 or 4 people were present, when they got exposed, each of those 3 or 4 people went back and exposed their families. Those family members went out to the store or whatever. So one merchant who doesn't wear a mask and the customer doesn't wear a mask, let's just say the customer doesn't know that he's carrying a virus. It goes to the salesperson. The salesperson then serves 12 more people, and each of those 12 people have been now exposed. So in a flash, in an overnight, we could have an outbreak. We could have a real crisis. And it is not imaginary. It's what has happened in all the other communities around the country. And we've had over 110 or 12,000 people have died, not to mention the hundreds of thousands of people who have suffered horrible symptoms and been in isolation, and their families can't even visit them. I mean, this is not a hoax. This is not a joke. And we have been really lucky. So I am a vulnerable, at-risk person, and lots of people in Willits are. And I don't want one or two places or mass gatherings that don't follow the rules to expose all of the rest of us. And to me, this is very much like all of our other public, our laws are intended to protect the public welfare and the public good. So if we limit people driving over the speed limit in residential areas, that's for everybody's benefit. And if the people who did that regularly and went 40 miles an hour down a street with school kids on it didn't face a fine, there would be no consequence. You know, you could warn them and they'd say, well, I don't, so what? I think we have 95% of the business community, certainly, and hopefully a very big percentage of our residents really are taking care, and they're trying to follow the rules as best as they know. And so I don't see this being used as a weapon or as a punishment for all those people that are really doing their very best. In fact, I would be happy to add some wording that would say, for example, that businesses that are doing a good faith effort to follow the rules would not be cited unless there was like they wouldn't be cited if a customer, despite their warnings, didn't wear a mask. I don't think our code enforcement officer has any intention of using this widely. In fact, I would like to see us never have a fine in the entire city. That's the whole goal. But I think if somebody isn't taking care, they are putting all of the rest of us in the community at risk, and that there should be a potential consequence. It should be used very sparingly, and hopefully rarely, if ever. But to me, a law and a health directive that is intended to protect the general public's health should have some kind of consequence. And I feel that this ordinance is not heavy-handed. It's not intended to hurt our business community. And I'm sorry that people feel that that's somehow how it's going to be used. But really, council members, the staff, including code enforcement, who would go out and talk to people, we would always want people to do the very best they can and comply voluntarily. But I think there should be a consequence if there are businesses that are, in fact, basically intentionally not following the rules and putting the rest of the community at really grave risk of their lives and their health. So this is, to me, a common sense. It's in the public interest. So that's how I feel about it. And I certainly have heard all of the arguments, and I want to protect our local businesses. I don't see this as an anti-business thing at all. It's a pro-community, pro-health. So that's my position. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. I think you added in some extra stuff that I wanted to say too. I don't ever want to be an anti-business, because I don't think that's any of our intent. And so thank you for wrapping that up. I guess at this point, if I have a motion or don't have a motion, I think that will either drive this one way or the other. And
Can I actually add a little bit of a staff perspective?
Sure.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to let folks know this is Stephanie Gebransura, and I just wanted to say that I have reached out to some businesses who talked to us, and One of the concerns that was also they didn't want staff to be overrun with people sort of telling on their neighbors, oh, so-and-so's not wearing a mask and this and that. They really felt that would be an impact to our city staff, which was another perspective. I just didn't hear it expressed today. And I wanted to say that this is a really good discussion, and my understanding is that in Fort Bragg and in Ukiah, this has not been targeted towards businesses at all and their ordinances, and all they did was they wanted to have it on the books in case there was something egregious happening, and that it was not intended at all to be punitive. And I have to say that businesses in Willits have been, I have not seen many violations. I've really only seen one business that was in violation, and I think people are giving their good faith efforts, and it was certainly no intent. I didn't think that we had ever intended to be at all punitive on businesses, and we weren't even thinking of businesses. What we were thinking of is if there was a case in which there was somebody doing something egregious that could bring harm to the community, that we would have some tool to use to be able to protect the community. And that was what we were concerned with. We certainly weren't concerned with, fining people $25 for a mask. And unfortunately, that seems to be the tenor of some of the social media. And that is certainly not true, and it was something that was never discussed. And so I was disappointed to see that was the focus, as certainly staff's focus was, what if something were really terrible planned, such as a rodeo via like Cottonwood tried to do, or did, which really resulted in some really bad things happening to that county. And I just wanted to add that. But I appreciate the discussion and all the thought that's gone into this, so thank you.
And Howard, I have something to add. Well, I just want to remind the council that although it sounds like the spirit from the management level of what the ordinance was, the wording in the document itself won't hold the spirit should somebody decide to enforce it. It's really about what is written in the document. I run a business where, for example, my child care center is highly regulated by the state. I have different people that come by, and they all have a different sentiment in terms of how they enforce. Some have a lighter hand, some have a heavier hand. The fact is, I have to follow the rules to the T because I don't know who's going to show up when, and I want to always be in compliance. By putting something like this forward, it is scary as a business owner to constantly be worrying about whether or not you're going to financially stay afloat, and then also staying abreast of every change that the county is bringing about in terms of their health orders, and then worrying about how it's going to be enforced. And it's not always clear, as I believe Verrill from Coast Hardware has recently pointed out, that he's sought out some advice from the county in regards to enforcement of masks and whether or not business owners were responsible for enforcement. And they said that they were going to speak to legal, and then he's never gotten a follow-up. This is a serious concern for the rest of us business owners, is whether or not we are accountable for asking every person who comes in, do we have to say, put your mask on? Do we have to say, what are your health issues? It's not clearly spelled out what our role is, and many of us feel that this is outside of our role. So the letter of the law is as important as the spirit of the law is at the moment. The spirit can change later. And then in my final comment, I think that it's important that the public should know, Mayor Gonzalez, where you stand on the issue. I know that you gave your feelings in terms of I understand this, I understand that, and we all did, and we've all stated that we understand both sides of the coin. But then at the end of the day, we took a position, and I think it's only fair that you let the public know what your position is. Are you for or against it?
Well,
I actually would love to support this if the wording were such that Madge has suggested, because I feel that there are a lot of businesses that are really trying, but I got to tell you, I also have a lot of employees that I've talked to at different businesses that feel like there's no teeth in this, so they're afraid to speak up. That's where I'm kind of torn. That I don't want to target our businesses, but at the same time, I also care about a lot of the workers out there. So if there was language in there that a business is trying to, as you put it, the spirit of the law is captured in this, then I could support it.
This is Madge. Can I make a motion with a directive to staff added to it? Would that be, is that kosher, Jim?
Yes, sure, you could do that.
Okay. I hope this will make sense. I would like to move approval of the urgency ordinance and add to that a directive to our staff that it will be used extremely rarely and in almost all cases should be preceded by education and advice, and that we would not, unless there was an egregious case, expect businesses to enforce their behavior of their customers. They would be expected to meet the requirements for the running of their own business, but not held responsible to the compliance of individual customers. I believe that covers some of the concerns that have been raised. So that would be the directive to our staff to enforce rarely, very with great reservation, and only in the event that it's the business is not complying themselves as opposed to their customers. And by the way, I just wanted to add that individuals have the choice to wear a mask or not wear a mask, up to the point where they're in a room full of a bunch of other people who are being exposed to. And we all still have individual choice, and we can choose not to go to places where people aren't wearing masks. But if we're in a public place and other people, anyway, that's another opinion thing. So that's my motion with the directive to staff.
So, Jim, I have a question. If, in the event that, because I'm not sure if that kind of captures what, it's not modifying the ordinance, but it's a directive to staff. If someone decided to take it to the letter of the law instead of the spirit of the law, how does that work?
If you say if a code enforcement officer doesn't follow the directive, is that what you're asking?
Yeah. What keeps them from sticking to what we suggest here? I mean, I think what I was originally looking for maybe was a modification of the ordinance that provided some shielding to businesses that made a good faith effort to follow the rules. And speaking to Mr. Hosford's concern that a guy scratching his nose off in the corner and somebody complains, I think that would not be in keeping with what I'd be looking for. But obviously, somebody coughing at me in one of the stores, not wearing his mask, and I asked the manager, "Hey, that guy's over there, kind of being gross."
Well, I think Madge's comments and suggestions for how this is going to be applied, how this is going to be used, is understandable, and staff can, I believe, follow that directive. So the ordinance could be a draft, could be adopted as it is, with the understanding that your enforcement officer, which is basically your city manager or her designee, or a code enforcement officer, is expected to only issue citations to be preceded with a warning and advice, and to be used rarely and not toward business owners who are making a good faith effort to comply with the orders. So I think that's entirely possible, and staff would have that directive and follow it.
I guess what would give them the shielding other than, I guess, because I think Sabrina was speaking towards letter, et cetera, the law, and I'm just curious, what would shield that business? What sort of proof of what's out there that could be brought in? I guess that's the concern I have, because I feel like I don't want to come across to those businesses that are doing their best and there's some aberrant behavior that they address, because I think a lot of businesses are pretty good about that. I mean, it's occasionally where the employees, I think, feel like somebody just shows up. I think the one gentleman that I spoke with recently told me that he felt like people in town generally followed the rules. It's just that they get folks coming in from outside the area, and he kind of didn't feel like he had backup to deal with it.
Well, if there's concern that staff wouldn't follow the council's directive about how this is going to be used and how it's not going to be used, an alternative would simply to be provide another provision in the ordinance that addresses that, and have a paragraph that basically summarizes what Councilmember Strong was suggesting.
Madge, I think if you modified yours, I could support it if it had that provision in the actual ordinance, but not. So that's what I'm looking at.
Okay, well, I'm not sure where it goes in the ordinance. It's really about the intent and the and by the way, I just want to say I am 100% sure that's how our staff was intending to use this, if at all. Anyway, I mean, we've already heard from a number of our staff people that their absolute first choice and hopefully the only choice is to talk to people that aren't complying and say, by the way, it's really important, and whatever. Like if you see kids on the playground and they're not supposed to be on the playground, you don't give them a citation. You talk to them. It's a kind of common sense. But where would that go? Legislative purpose.
I don't know exactly. It would be a new section. Perhaps it would appear right before Section 19, the secret compliance section on page 10, to state what the manner in which the ordinance would be enforced. And it's difficult to legislate during a meeting and to craft language during a meeting. One alternative would be to allow staff to add that language and then bring this back at yet another meeting.
I do feel like it's important for us to have this tool available relatively quickly, and that's why it's an urgency ordinance. Every 2 weeks, as I said, in one day the situation could change, and I hope it doesn't, but it could. So is it? What I would like to suggest is that my motion stands if anyone wants to second it and enact it, and then we revisit this, say, in 1 month, and maybe change the language if needed at that time. That's what I would like to suggest.
Okay. At this point, do I have a second to Madge's? Jim, for discussion purposes and for getting this going, is it permissible for me to second her motion?
Yes, you have authority to second a motion.
Okay. Then I will second Madge's motion just so that we can move on and continue the discussion or the vote. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
This is Sabrina. I have a question. So,
go for it.
Okay. So, Jim, what is the expectation, for example, if this ordinance passes, what is the expectation of a business owner if somebody walks in and has no mask on? Are we expected to tell them to put on a mask? Are we expected to put up a sign that says masks are required, or masks only required if you don't have a precluding health condition? Are we expected to ask them what their health condition is? And then considering the recent situation where many businesses were sued over ADA, isn't there some legal concern that businesses are potentially opening themselves up for discrimination lawsuits if we ask people about their health conditions or require them to wear a mask or refuse service to them if they don't have a mask?
Well, in answer to your question, almost every place of business that I go to, a mask is required. If I go to the grocery store, if I go anywhere, a hardware store, if I don't have a mask on, and this happened to me, I forgot a mask and went to a hardware store a couple of weeks ago, and I was strictly told I couldn't stay in the store. But actually, at that hardware store, I was offered a new clean mask from the employee. So I think the guidance to businesses in Willits is that they require masks for persons entering the store, and if you politely ask them to wear a mask and they refuse, I think in that circumstance you would be entitled to tell them that they must leave. And if they continue in your store after they've been asked to leave, I think you could be pretty safe to know that the City of Willits staff is not going to be citing you under those circumstances with a violation of this ordinance. And I wouldn't be concerned about a vulnerability to a lawsuit by such a person to a business owner. I don't know that you necessarily need to inquire about what someone's health concerns are, and that might be going a little too far in an invasion of their privacy. But I think you have every lawful right as a business owner to require people to wear masks who come into your business.
Can I comment to, this is Madge.
Hold on, Madge, I'd like to finish, please. Just one more minute. So let me give you an example. My father has emphysema. If he goes to a store, and I'm just going to use him as an example, if he goes to a store, it is not safe for him to wear a mask. It's not healthy. He could pass out. There's a lot of health issues. The county health order says that he doesn't have to wear a mask because he has a health condition. So are you then stating that businesses should have the right to demand that he wear a mask, and if he doesn't, based on his disability, he doesn't have the right to access to go to the store and get groceries and such? That doesn't feel appropriate.
Well,
Can I just add something really quick, and that is that and I'm sorry, Jim, I don't mean to interrupt, but I think that our ordinance doesn't change the law, and I think that makes a difference. We're not adding to the law that already exists. We're only asking for an enforcement tool, but we're not changing the law. And I don't know if that helps at all.
It does. Can I also add, as a business owner, we don't know whether or not somebody has a health condition, and that is the challenge for us business owners.
Well, I would think in your hypothetical, council members, that if you asked a customer who you didn't know, who came into your store without a mask, you asked that customer to please put on a mask, I think the customer who has emphysema or who has some other health condition that precludes them from wearing a mask would inform you of that. And that this is an exception. They may be in your store without a mask under those circumstances.
And I was going to clarify that in my directive to staff that I added was that the business owner is supposed to do a good faith attempt to follow the rules, including warning their customers that masks are required. And by the way, the Howard Foundation provides free masks to any businesses that wants to have them at their front entrance. so that they can offer them to any customer that arrives without a mask. So that covers that. But if somebody shows up and says, I can't wear a mask because I have emphysema, or they don't even say that, they just say, I'm not going to wear a mask. My directive says we don't enforce that against the business owner. That the business owner is not expected to be the police for individuals who are their customers. But if their clerk is not wearing a mask, that magnifies the potential impact of the customer not wearing a mask. As long as the store employees are wearing masks, it's way, way less dangerous for the community. So that was the example I gave before, and I think it's still, in my view, we aren't trying to expect business owners to be police, but we do want them to make a good faith effort, and they should have masks available for customers that forgot to bring a mask. Great, that's just good faith, and that's what our community is doing. Right? I think we're already doing most of this. So that's part of my motion, is that we don't enforce, we don't punish a business for a customer's behavior.
Hey, this is Greta. Can I say something?
Hey, Greta.
Over the last several weeks, there has been... Okay, thank you. Over the last several weeks, there have been several incidences that have concerned city staff and that have been used as examples of why we need this ordinance. Whether it was retail businesses on Main Street jumping the gun before the county actually allowed curbside service to resume or them to reopen. There was the church that threatened to open before the governor had changed the rules. There was a pool party that was being threatened. All of those events have resolved peacefully with talking to people directly without the threat of fines. We have been able to just be direct and ask for compliance, and the community has responded. So I just wonder why we need this when we have a police chief who has stated that his preference is education and outreach, when Madge is trying to rewrite the ordinance to say we don't really actually want to use it or really fine anybody. Why even have it then? Let's just continue to be human and talk to one another and ask for our community to do the right thing. And largely, that's what they're doing.
Thank you, Greta. Again, my second was so we could continue with the discussion and not drag this on. Matt, you bring up some good points, and Greta, you bring up some good points there. I'll just end it on my side before I call for a vote. That when I talked to the employee I was talking to, it was from the heart that felt, he said there should be some consequence, but he kind of felt like, he was a nice young man. And I've also talked to older folks, too, that are petrified. In the case of the asthmatic or the emphysema person, I would hope they're probably more careful about where they go and stuff. And I guess they're like Matt said, they're probably, as long as they're not coughing on the clerk or whatever, that more than likely they're more at risk than the clerk is at that point. Okay. Is there any other discussion? Otherwise, I was just going to call for a vote so we can move on. Okay. Kathy?
Councilmember Connie?
No.
Rodriguez?
No.
Strong?
Yes.
Stranske?
Yes.
Mayor Gonzalez?
Yes. And just to let everybody know that it did not pass because it needed 4 votes and we only got 3. So I'd like to thank everybody that spoke and contacted us, and I appreciate the debate. And I just hope everybody is courteous and wears a mask, etc. And maybe we'll revisit this if the curve is bent in the other direction. Okay, I guess we'll move on to our next item. Item 4B, introduction and adoption of urgency ordinance modifying chapter 2.44 of the city code to authorize the director of emergency services to waive zoning requirements or standards to facilitate the operations of businesses affected by the novel coronavirus COVID-19. Is this Dustin?
Yes, this is Dusty. Dusty?
Can people hear me?
Now we can.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, council members. Dusty Dooley, your Community Development Director. Essentially what we have in front of you is introduction and adoption of an urgency ordinance that would allow us to provide flexibility to zoning requirements and city standards to basically assist businesses adapt to the new restrictions due to COVID. Examples that I can think of, maybe a restaurant wanting to establish outdoor dining to help offset the loss of indoor seating capacity due to the new social distancing requirements. Typically, a business owner would need to receive council approval for outdoor dining permit and pay the application fee, and certainly that process can take 4 to 6 weeks to meet noticing requirements and get the matter before council with appropriate report. If this ordinance is approved as written, staff would be able to issue a temporary zoning permit to that business owner to allow for the outdoor dining, provided it was appropriate. And when I say appropriate, the things that would come to mind that you'd want to check on is to make sure that the outdoor seating, if it was on a sidewalk, wasn't going to interfere with ADA requirements. Something, if they're going to be serving alcohol, then certainly you need to make sure that ABC is okay with it. So those are the types of checks and balances that would still be in place. Another example may be that a retail store wants to bring products outside and make use of their parking lot. If those parking spaces were otherwise required to meet parking standards per our city code, staff would not be able to support that wish unless the council approved the variance application. And again, there's a time frame and cost with bringing a variance application forward to the council. If the ordinance is approved, staff would be able to issue a temporary zoning permit and allow them to safely use the parking lot for that wish. I don't pretend to know all the ideas that businesses will come up with, but it's the intent that this ordinance would give us the tool and flexibility to support any appropriate ideas that our resilient business community can dream up. The currently written, a request would come in, be reviewed by myself as the Community Development Director. Any decision that I rendered would be appealable to the city manager, and any decision that the city manager made would be appealable to the city council. Any permit we did issue, we can still put a time limit on it, but certainly it would expire concurrently with the termination of the emergency, of the individual emergency. In this case, of course, the COVID-19 emergency. If we did issue a permit and the applicant wasn't following through appropriately, and the use was found to be creating a public nuisance or some sort of health or safety issue, the city would still have the ability to revoke that temporary permit. So you have the information in the agenda summary and the ordinance there. You have both a clean version and an edited version showing the verbiage that staff's recommended be added to the city code. And with that, I'm always happy to answer any questions that the council may have.
Betsy, thank you very much. I know I brought this up a while back, and I think you added more than I was even thinking for something like this, something that we need to support our local businesses with. At this point, I'm going to ask each of the council members if they have a question, and then I'll open it up to the public. So I'll start off with Sabrina.
Yes, I do, and I agree. I'm very appreciative of this. I think that the community and business owners are appreciative of what this means to them. My question is about the definition of the ending of the COVID-19, because some people think that it's when we get to a particular stage. For some, it may be when we get the vaccination. And it is possible that we may never get a vaccine, although that's not what we hope. And I'm just wondering if, I can't recall, and I was going to scroll back through to the actual document itself at the end, but do you know offhand if we had a very clear definition of when the end date for this would be?
It references back to City Code Section 2.44.130, local emergency termination. And so it's essentially up to the council to proclaim the termination of the local emergency.
Okay, so like right now we proclaim it every 30 days. So should we stop proclaiming it at the end of the last period? That would be when business owners would have a clear understanding of when it ends. I just want to make sure that people, I know I'm repeating myself, but I want to make sure that, like, if I was this business owner, not that I'm going to, and I was putting something outside, I would have a clear understanding of when I would need to clean up and bring things inside or transition to an inside environment. So if it's every 30 days, and I would know that at the end of that 30-day period, if a virus had come about or whatnot, that I would have a date in mind. Sorry, I know that's kind of rambling and unclear.
No, I appreciate the question. There's an opportunity to put a, say, 60-day limit on the temporary permit, and then if we're still in a state of emergency, just simply renew that permit. Again, there's no fee involved. Where the ordinance says that we will waive all planning application fees. So that, a standard condition may be that this temporary permit is issued for a period of 60 days, or until the termination of the local emergency, consistent with city code.
Okay.
And that's about the best clarity that I can think of off the top of my head here.
Okay. Thank you. Good job.
Go ahead.
No question. Good job, Dusty.
Thank you.
Matt, you want to say anything?
No questions. Although I would say if it turns out to be a really good idea, that after a state of emergency is no longer with us, that some of these might become ongoing. But
okay, good idea. Larry, do you have anything you want to say?
No questions.
Right. So at this point, I'm going to open it up to any member of the public that would like to speak to this business amendment. Is there anybody from the public that would like to speak?
John Sherman.
Okay, John, go ahead.
I just want to wholeheartedly support this. I think this is the kind of message and cooperation that the city needs to extend towards its business community. You've got to realize that this is all an emergency, but it's also an emergency every single day for these small business people. So even one more layer of regulation at City Hall is a burden. So what I'd like to see is I'd like to see this enacted for a minimum of 90 days and then to be considered again by the council, so that these business owners have time to get this process, number one, and number two, they don't have to deal with this constant moving target.
All right, thank you, John. Would anybody else like to speak? Anybody else? And if so, state your name. Okay, at this point I will close the public comment part and bring it back up. At this point, do I have a motion?
This is Sabrina, and I'll make a motion. And I want to say that, John, thank you very much. You put it into words what I was trying to get across to Dusty, was that businesses needed at a defined time because there are so many moving targets. So thank you for spelling that out a little clearer.
I second it, Larry.
All right, thank you. Motion is seconded by Larry. Any further discussion?
Yes, this is Madge. I liked John Sherman's suggestion that it be potentially a 90-day instead of 60-day, because a business is going to have a certain amount of effort to go into, say, putting out extra tables and whatever hardware they need to enable taking advantage of this, and to do it only with 60 days. And let's just say, miraculously, the emergency ended, but they've already put in a good deal of effort. So I would like to ask Dusty, would he think a 90-day period would be would be okay, and would the maker and seconder of the motion, if Dusty thinks it's a good idea, would accept that as a friendly amendment?
This is Sabrina, yes.
This is Larry, yes.
Dusty? Okay. Dusty, is that doable?
Yeah, I think under most circumstances, issuing a 90-day permit is completely appropriate. And I threw 60 days because kind of just off the top example. I will just mention that as sort of playing referee to this, there may be certain requests that I may struggle to see as completely appropriate, and I might choose to use discretion to issue a limited duration permit, just because I think there's some additional concerns, and really we need to give it a trial run. But I think in most cases, at least with the examples I can think of, I would have no issue using discretion and providing a 90-day permit.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I guess you'd end up writing that up, so it would be 90 with in some cases, something like that.
So would you like the motion to include up to a 90-day?
Dusty, would that work?
Whatever pleases the council. Yeah. I think we purposely left some of the details out, and we recognize as the agenda summary. Should the council approve this tonight, staff will develop more detailed parameters to be incorporated into the temporary zoning permits. And what I've heard from the council is to provide a lengthier time frame, such as 90 days. And I don't have issue with following with that direction. I don't know that it necessarily needs to be codified, though.
Okay.
Dusty, this is Sabrina. One follow-up question for Dusty. If I was an applicant, do you already have something, or would you have something put together that would clearly define whether or not I would be looking at a 60, a 30, or a 90, so that it kind of eliminated a little bit of the discretion and more of a cross-the-board fairness, like in this particular, I don't know, if you're on a one-way street versus if you're in a parking lot, or I just am worrisome about putting you in a discretionary situation, and I'm wondering if maybe we should have stuck to the 60 days just so that we're not putting you in that situation and making it variable for business owners.
Staff has to exercise discretion on a fairly regular basis, and one of the most important things that we can do in our job is be consistent in our decision making. And again, if folks are unhappy with a decision that I render, there is an appealable process that can rise to the level of the council. So this sort of isn't new territory for us in the sense of having to use discretion and good judgment. It certainly is new territory as far as understanding the plethora of ideas that may come forward as a result of this opportunity in the current situation.
Okay, then Mayor, I'll keep my motion with the wording up to 90 days.
Larry, is it Larry that seconded?
Yes.
Okay. And you're agreeable with that?
Yes.
Okay. So we have a motion and an amended motion. At this point, I'll call
Councilmember Connie?
Yes.
Rodriguez,
Yes.
Strong,
Yes.
Stranske,
Yes.
Mayor Gonzalez.
Yes, and again, thank you, Dusty, for listening. I know you always do, but thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, now we're on to item 5, the consent calendar. We have City Council minutes for May 13th to 22nd, which was a special meeting, 27th.
Mayor
And
Gonzalez?
we have a yes.
I'm sorry, I did not place the minutes from May 13th in the agenda. That was my mistake, so they will come forward at the next meeting.
Okay, so I guess it's the meeting minutes of the 22nd special meeting and the 27th. And then item B, resolution ratifying and extending an additional 30 days the City Council's declaration of order to exist with a local emergency as a result of novel coronavirus COVID-19 pursuant to resolution 2020-10. And then a resolution calling for the holding of a general municipal election to be held on November 3rd, 2020, and consolidate and request the county clerk to conduct said election with statewide general election. And then item D, approve the purchase of 2 upgraded stainless steel filter screens in the amount of $36,175.57 for the Trident water treatment clarifiers. Do I have anybody who wants to pull anything, or do I have a motion?
This is Madge. I would make a motion to approve, but I would like Kathy to please announce to the general public what the deadlines for filing for the city council elections are.
It opens on, hold on one moment, July 13th and closes on August 7th. And I ask that anybody that would like to pick up papers for this, please call and make an appointment so that we can set up some time and figure out how we're going to issue packets.
All right,
And if any one of the incumbents does not file, if any one of the 3 who are up for re-election does not file, then it's extended by almost a week. Is that correct?
To August 12th, correct.
Thank you.
All right, and Kathy, for the record, can you, would it just be the city hall number, 459-4601, that they would call?
They can either call that or my direct line, which is 459-7121.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So at this point, unless anybody wants to pull anything, do I have a motion for the consent calendar?
Yeah, I move the consent calendar.
I second it, Larry.
All right. Call for the vote?
Councilmember Connie?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
No. I wanted to make note that I was asked for item 4 of the minutes of the meeting on May 27th to ask for additional description under item number 4, end of the paragraph, but I think that tonight it was already recognized position, so I'm just noting that because I was asked, but I don't think that we need to add it at this point. It's already been clarified. My vote on this matter is yes.
Okay.
Councilmember Stranske?
Yes.
Councilmember Strong?
Yes.
Mayor Gonzalez?
Yes. All right. Now we are on item 6, informational reports, building inspection activity reports, and business license activity reports, and those will be available to the public in our packet and online. Item 7, commissions, agencies, and authorities. We meet concurrently as the City of Willits Planning Commission and the City of Willits Successor Agency, and there doesn't appear to be any business. So now to item 8. A, general discussion, city business as it relates to COVID-19.
Hi, this is Stephanie Gabracira, City Manager, and I have a couple things to bring up, as well as I know that John Sherman in open forum talked about resuming council meetings. Let me address that first. As I mentioned earlier, we clarified with the county health official today that all mass gatherings are still banned. And so even if we were to space in a in a large room, I don't think that that would be allowed. And we also don't have the sound system. We have the microphones in the council chambers, and I don't think that those are easily transferable. It would take some doing, but right now I do not think that is allowed. Although we are certainly anxious to get back to normal. The county health official.
I'm sorry. Yeah, Madge, I wanted to make one other comment. Having been in many Zoom conferences now, I wonder if we could consider that as an alternative to the phone conferencing, because it's a little bit easier to manage and to mute people that aren't called on and things like that. Just to consider it. It's not. It's up to you, but works.
It's certainly something we can consider. I'm going to ask the city clerk how she's the one that is going to have to be doing this, but I think that we can certainly try to do that.
We could.
It's the will of the council.
We could do that with the go-to meetings that we're currently doing. We could do an online face-to-face.
This is Sabrina, and I would agree with Madge. If you need a little more time to get it set up, that's totally doable, but I would support switching over to a Zoom format. Thank you.
And this is Jerry, and yeah, especially today, it just seemed really, Sabrina was trying to talk, and people sounded like they were clanging in their kitchen, and it just doesn't sound professional, and it interrupts the speaker, whoever it is, and you're trying to get a thought out, and it's just really hard. And I think the way whether it be Zoom or the GoToMeeting works is that they don't get to come into the room until they're ready, and then when you open it up, you have that control as the moderator. So, okay, thank you.
I know I'm familiar with Zoom, but we'd have to play with GoToMeeting a little bit, but we can certainly do that to figure it out. We'll figure it out.
Public participation. It's just public participation has been frustrating.
Agreed. On that line, the county, the governor issued some additional directives, and the county health official will be changing the health order yet again, and it's due to come out on Friday. The governor's proclamation actually came as a surprise to all the health officials, and so they're sort of scrambling to catch up. But on Friday, we are going to have a number of things opening up. Lodging will be opening up. Bars will be opening up. Theaters will be opening up. There will be some rules about that, and the county health official said that she met with there's an ad hoc committee of hotel owners and operators, and they actually contributed to what they thought would be required to be able to open successfully. And part of that is going to be occupancy rules, but really it's not just occupancy, it's the number of rooms used. And so I think they're looking at 60% of the rooms will be used, but approximately 40 can't be used. There would have to be 24-hour turnaround times between guests. There would be an understanding that if a guest was to contract or find that they had the virus while they were staying in lodging, that they would have to stay there and confined to their room for 14 days. And the hotel owner would be obligated to take care of them and bring food to them and make sure that they were okay for the 14 days that they were there. Bars, I think they're struggling with what time the bars can stay open. I think they're looking at about 10 o'clock. And theaters will also require some preparations, but we're going to see a lot more things opening on Friday. I know that we have been struggling with the rules as they are to put our swim lessons together, and Kathy's going to talk more about that later. But swim lessons pretty much sold out the first day. People were really anxious to do that, and we're hoping that the pool gets to open up a little more as time goes on. City Hall, none of the city halls in Mendocino County are open yet, but looking at our city hall, because we are Our city hall does not have a lot of uses. It's pretty much just people coming in to pay their water bill. I think that we're going to be opening City Hall probably this week. We did order a hand sanitizer for the front, and we did put up plastic on our windows so that we have a barrier for people speaking to the people handling money. And so we do have the infrastructure in place to be able to have people coming in from the outside again. We don't. We had a meeting with staff. Staff does not feel good about opening bathrooms to the public. We want to keep our porta potty outside for people to use, and close the city, keep the bathrooms closed for now. And also, community development is not set up yet. And won't be. We really can't because it's such close confinement. However, they are taking people by appointment on a regular basis, but those people are asked to use protocols such as masks and washing, and making sure that they're prepared to meet with somebody, and they have their precautions. It's like getting your hair cut or going to community development. And so we're going to keep that closed, but City Hall, we do want to just open the doors, and I think that would be easier for people to pay bills and things. The other issue that has been floating around is I know we had some concerns about the church opening a few weeks ago. Now we have people talking about sort of the alternative parade and possible other invitations to a mass gathering on the 4th of July. It was reiterated today that those mass gatherings are still not allowed. And there seems to be out there some invitations to people to gather on a mass gather, and that is not allowed under the state order. It's not something we made up. It's not something the county made up. It's not because we're being mean. It is what the rules are. So I know that graduation, and there was a graduation that was a event that the superintendent came to me a long time ago and said that they said exactly what terms that it was going to be under, that the cars would not stop, that we knew exactly who was going to be in each car, that people were not going to be invited to mass gather on sidewalks, but it was going to be prohibited, and they were told they were prohibited, even though people did, unfortunately. Other than that, it was a really smooth event, but it was extremely well planned. What I have heard, although no one has come to the city yet, is that people are being invited to gather on a mass basis. So there is some concern about this because it is not allowed, and while we don't have any enforcement tools, I would suggest that we do, just as we were talking about for other issues, is that we just simply write a letter. And the county health, I reached out to the county health official, and she actually wanted to do that in conjunction with the city council, and just to ask people to please obey the order. And I'm asking sort of permission to do that, to write a simple letter. It was also suggested by our city attorney is that we just write a letter asking that a mass gathering not happen. So that's what I'm asking for some direction on.
I don't mean to interrupt, but this is Caitlin Garcia. I'm the organizer of the alternate parade. May I have a moment to speak?
Well, go ahead, Caitlin.
Thank you, Jerry. So I just want to say that we have been putting out flyers, inviting people to come to this parade, but I don't know if you've actually seen the flyers. There is not going to be a mass gathering that is going on. We are encouraging people that want to watch the parade to practice social distancing. We are also encouraging anybody that wants to take part in the parade to obey all of the traffic laws. We're going to have a meeting place that is large enough for everyone to remain by their vehicles. We have a starting time. We have an extended route, so that way people can watch from afar and not be packed on the sidewalk. I obviously don't think it's going to have the turnout that the traditional 4th of July parade does, but I think that it is just a show of unity for our community, which is why we organized this in the first place. So, yeah, we're encouraging people to follow all of the laws, all traffic laws. We're not shutting down any streets. We're not encouraging people to gather in massive collections to watch the parade. And we're, encouraging everyone to stay in their vehicles. And we're just basically going to drive through town and celebrate the unity of our community and the freedom that we have. And we're not encouraging anyone to break any of the shelter-in-place laws. I don't feel like we're doing anything wrong. So for any lawyer to come, saying that we're trying to break any of the laws is just incorrect.
Thank you, Caitlin. I just want to point out I had a conversation with Caitlin earlier expressing concerns that Stephanie had brought up, and also explaining that the good old Facebook ramblings that I was made aware of, that folks were planning something more than what Caitlin is talking about. Caitlin said that she wasn't supportive of that, that the experiment was said to us out here. I also spoke with Adriana earlier today, Wyatt, and same thing I passed on, that we were concerned that folks would gather, etc. And I also expressed that I did see, while I did not witness the high school parade, I drove through town before it and saw a lot of folks gathering, and I told her that could potentially happen at their parade. Again, that it would not be a city-sanctioned parade. I explained to her that in all my years of working with Frontier Days, that planning on a parade took a lot of effort and time, and that we would start sometimes as early as February or March to get the parade to where it was safe. And therefore, I could not support this parade because it's not a city event, and we would not be insuring it. That's what I wanted to add to that.
I'm sorry. I wanted to add that even spacing people out 6 feet on the sidewalk, according to the governor's order, that is still considered a mass gathering. Bringing people together to party or to watch a parade is considered a mass gathering according to the governor's order. That's why, and I'm just bringing the message out there. And with the high school parade, it was very well planned that the kids would actually stay in their cars, and no one was outside of their car, and well, at least that's what we were told, is that no one was going to be allowed to get out of their cars at all. And the graduation ceremony. We had also heard that there is a barbecue planned, and Rec Grove is closed off. The barbecue pits have been closed, and the benches have been closed because that's not allowed. Also, Frontier Days does have rights to Rec Grove for the 2 weeks around Frontier Days, and they have actually exclusive rights to that area, but we could not allow a gathering in Rec Grove or in any of our parks. And I just wanted to put that out there.
Okay. Stephanie, do you have any?
This is Sabrina. I have a question.
Go ahead.
I'm not saying that I'm in favor of a mass gathering, but I am concerned, as has been expressed by the public, about a double standard of freedom of expression and a public graduation and a public ability to do one or both safely. And then secondly, I'm a little concerned about the fact that the Frontier Days notified the city of Willits that they were not going to be holding any of their Frontier Day activities. So it seems a little bit, in my opinion, a little bit inappropriate for us to say that they have exclusive rights to Rec Grove when they have already noticed the city that they won't be exercising their right to host this event this year. So I think that's skirting the line a little bit.
I'm just saying that it's in their contract that they have the right to use Rec Grove, and I did not hear them say that they've released that right. They said that they weren't going to hold a barbecue for the safety of the community.
I heard they weren't going to hold any festivities during the traditional Frontier Days. No rodeo, no barbecue, no parade. And so I don't know. I'm just being very frank. I'm going to hear from the public about this as well. It feels a little bit retaliatory from the city if we're stating that we're going to keep that off just so that we don't want another group to have it. I totally understand. We don't want any group gatherings, but we got to be careful that we're also being fair about it.
Well, I think the message is not to be retaliatory, certainly. It's simply to say that the city is trying to communicate what the governor's order is, and that is what the governor's order is. It's not my order, it's not the county's order, it's what the governor's order is. And we didn't make it up, and when the graduation was proposed to us, it was specifically told to us that we're going to be actively told not to congregate anywhere, and that there would not be groups. Unfortunately, that did happen, which shows that, wow, okay, so we tried it and it wasn't entirely successful, but the kids were great about what I've heard about staying in the cars, and people weren't outside the cars. In the gathering place, it was actually at the high school, and it was, people stayed in their cars during the graduation ceremony. So that's how that differs. And again, it was described to the county health official, and it appears that this would be a violation of the governor's order.
That's great. I think, Stephanie, do you have anything else on COVID?
I do not. I would just, like to know whether the council would like me to proceed with a joint letter from the county and the city, talking about that we would appreciate not having a mass gathering at Rec Grove or on our sidewalks. Sorry.
I'll just speak that I would support the letter because I believe that based on what Caitlin has said that that's not what they want to do. So I assume that they would have no problem getting a letter from us to that extent. And so therefore, based on what she has said that she wants to do, that's not what they say they're going to do. So a letter wouldn't hurt. And it would get the point across that that's not something we're sanctioning. And if something happens, that's basically on those individuals. And so that would be my take on it.
Larry, this is Larry, and I'm for the letter.
Okay. Madge?
Yes, I agree. I am somewhat reassured that the planners of this alternative parade have something pretty under control in mind, and it's certainly legal for vehicles to go one by one down Main Street as long as they're not blocking traffic or following the traffic rules. And I think it's probably even okay for them to use a public park as following all the other rules for public parks that we've already posted and keeping the distances. But certainly a barbecue that was open to the public and people, serving a bunch of people, that's a mass gathering, and that would be...
Yeah. Yeah, actually the current rules for the parks are you can't have a group, any group in the park. You can have up to 12 if it's related people or kids or children under the age of 12. That's the only circumstances that you can have up to 12 people
in one group. But yeah, if they were spaced out over the entire park,
yeah, you can't do that either.
Oh, okay.
That's still considered a gathering. The exception they had, and that was seen at the Black Lives Matter protest, was for protests and for worship.
So I think just reminding in the letter what the rules are and our urging that they strictly follow those rules and limits. I think that's a good idea.
Greta, do you want to speak on this?
I don't have anything to say right now.
Okay, and Sabrina.
I'm unclear about are we addressing the letter to the general public, or are we addressing the letter to a group?
To a group. The group that has already intended to do this, but it would certainly be to any group that we had heard wanted to do something that we felt that was against the ordinance, or against the order. It's clear that, we don't have enforcement tools, and that's fine. But we can, at least in a friendly way, remind people, hey, these are the rules, and if you want to follow them, that's great. But to the extent that you don't, we can't support you.
I would not be able to vote for it unless I had access to the letter prior to issuing it. I wouldn't be comfortable just saying that I would approve a letter without knowing what exactly was in the letter. So if we have access to the letter and approval prior, then yes. Otherwise, no.
I can certainly circulate something. I know Dr. Duhan is working on it with County Council, and we can circulate it prior to maybe next meeting.
Okay.
Or you can, or the mayor can put together an ad hoc committee if there's votes for that.
Well, I think there's still time because we'll have one more meeting and we could send a letter by then. And we just bring it back.
This is Greta. I don't think you need an ad hoc committee to write a letter. I think Stephanie's fully capable of writing a letter, and as long as council, if council members who want to look at it have an opportunity to do that, it seems to me that would be certainly fine. So we don't need another ad hoc committee to write a letter.
Okay, I don't think we did either. I think we'll just come back to the next meeting and we look at it then.
Agree?
Agreed. Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Do you have anything else, Stephanie?
I did want to, a non-COVID item that I wanted to bring to your attention is that the chief, our chief is not here tonight. He's out of town, but he wanted to make it clear that effective June 9th, the carotid control. Yes?
This is Chief Allen. I am here.
Oh, you're here. I'm sorry. I forgive me.
Oh.
I'm stealing your thunder. I will wait till your turn to go ahead and talk about your initiative. Thank you.
Thank you.
And this is Madge. I had a COVID-related news from the wastewater treatment plant. Can I
please
interrupt? Is that okay?
Yes, please. This is a COVID item.
Yes, it's a COVID item. So after our last meeting, I announced that I had an anonymous donor who would pay the $1,200 for us to have our sewage influent tested. And Stephanie passed that along to Scott Herman, who went ahead and contacted the private company that does these tests. And as of, I believe, today, he has ordered the tests, but he also got in touch with the Brook Trails folks, and they are going to pay to have their portion of the sewage influent also tested, so that when we do this test, which hopefully will be within about a week, assuming the company sends us the samples all, we will be able to know whether the Willits area and the Brook Trails area of our sewage flow have any COVID-19 residue in them, and it'll really help us have a baseline for where we stand in the community. If we turn out to have a significant level of COVID-19, it means we have some asymptomatic people who are carrying the virus, And if we have none, that's really good news, and it would also stand us in good stead going forward. If things change, we know what the levels are. So I'm really pleased, and that Scott was able to proceed with that, and he was really pleased. So I just wanted to report that we will very soon have a kind of a baseline test for our sewage influence for the COVID-19 bacteria, virus. That's it. Thanks to our anonymous donors.
Did you have anything else? Otherwise, I'd give department recommendations.
I have no other COVID items.
Adoption, item A, adoption of resolution approving an amendment to the joint powers agreement between the Council of Government to add housing matters to the power.
Hi, this is Dusty again. Do I have the floor, Mayor?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. This is a request to adopt a resolution approving amendment to the joint powers agreement of the Mendocino Council of Governments to add housing matters as a specific power. The Mendocino Council of Government, or MCOG, is our regional transportation planning agency. A lot of our federal and state transportation funds are allocated through MCOG, and more recently, planning funds related to increasing housing it has become available to the MCOG. The HCD recently established the Regional Early Action Planning Grant Program, known as REAP, which MCOG would be eligible to receive a total of $383,245. MCOG is simply asking local jurisdictions, including Willits, to approve an amendment to the joint powers agreements to provide to add housing production related matters to their list of. You do have the proposed amendment language to the joint powers agreement. It's Exhibit A in your packet. So you can see the specific language that is being requested to be approved by the council. I think that's all I was prepared to say on the matter, and I believe we might have Nafili Barrett, who's the director of MCOG, on the phone, who may also want to address the council, Mayor.
All right. If she's available, I'll listen to her now.
All right. Hi, council members. This is Nafili Barrett from MCOG. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay. So I don't have a whole lot to add. Dusty did a good job of summarizing the issue at hand. This will allow MCOG to access grant funding that's been made available through the state, which will benefit the local agencies, cities, and county. This, as far as we know, is one-time funding at this point, but it could become ongoing funding in the future. This particular round of funding, we have been informed, will not be affected by any future revenue losses due to the current pandemic. So that's some good news. We have all along been responsible for the regional housing needs allocation as well, although that's never been formalized in our JPA. So this JPA amendment also includes formalizing that responsibility. So I am happy to answer any questions. And if not, I appreciate your support.
Does anybody have any questions for her on the council? No. Anybody? Go ahead. All right. Anybody from the public would like to ask any questions? Okay, I guess I'll bring it back up to us. Again, anybody from the up on the council have any questions in general on this? If not, we can entertain a motion.
Larry, this is Larry, and I recommended action.
This is Madge. I'll second it.
Okay, Madge seconds. And any further discussion? All right, Kathy, could you call for the vote?
Yes. Councilmember Connie?
Yes, and thank you.
Strong?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Stranske?
Yes.
Mayor Gonzalez?
Yes, without an echo. All right. Dusty, while you're still up, do you have anything else you want to add that you haven't covered already?
No, I don't, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have anybody from Public Works or Engineering? All right. I just want to note that the fire department did ask for an encroachment permit to do some work. Currently, I got CC'd on an email where Jeremy was working with Chris Wilkes on getting him the paperwork, so I'm real happy that that is proceeding. Human Resources, do you have anything?
No, I do not.
All right. Public Safety, Chief, Police Chief. Hello? Okay. I guess at this point I'll see if our fire chief has anything. Okay, I don't hear our fire chief. And Stephanie, maybe you could, since it sounds like we might have lost the chief, if you could summarize.
Hello,
there you are.
Yes,
Hi, Chief.
Hi. Hi. Good evening, Mayor, City Council, and the community. In alignment with new state police training, effective June 9th, I have modified our police use of force policy to reflect that the carotid control hose has been removed from our Willits Police Policy Manual. This procedure was misapplication of the control hose that ultimately resulted in the death of George Floyd. So we have removed that control hose from our policy manual. We have alternative methods of controlling violent suspects, and we'll provide training so that persons are taken into custody safely. That's all I have. Thank you.
What's that?
Yeah, unless you have any questions.
I do, I guess more statement. There's been a lot of folks contacting different government entities regarding their police use of force. I would hope in the future you'd be prepared to give kind of a brief overview on the department's use of force for the public. And
I would look forward to that. Yes, sir. I would look forward to that opportunity.
Thank you, sir. All right. At this point, do I have any other staff? Otherwise, I was going to, I guess, open it up to Jim for item B, discussion and possible adoption of City Council 2020 Code of Ethics and Conduct for elected and appointed officials.
Thank you. This is Jim Lance, your city attorney. At our last meeting, I suggested that the council consider adopting a code of ethics, which is a common practice for public agencies, and it's basically a written pledge and commitment to follow a code of conduct and support yourself according to policies that are developed and to avoid other things. And so what you have before you is a draft code of ethics that was modeled after the code that the city of Saratoga adopted some years ago. And I think the same code has been adopted by many other cities. And at the top of page 3, I just will read you a couple sentences that kind of summarizes what this all is all about. It reads under the heading Policy Purpose. the Willits City Council has adopted a code of ethics and conduct for members of the City Council to assure public confidence in the integrity of local government and its effective and fair operation. And then it goes on to say the citizens and businesses of Willits are entitled to have fair, ethical, and accountable local government, which has earned the public's full confidence for integrity. In keeping with the City of Willits' commitment to excellence, the effective functioning of democratic government therefore requires that, 1, public officials, both elected and appointed, comply with both the letter and spirit of the laws and policies affecting the operations of government. 2, public officials be independent, impartial, and fair in their judgment and action. 3, public office be used for the public good, not for personal gain. And 4, public deliberations and processes be conducted openly, unless legally confidential, in an atmosphere with respect and civility. And so then, within the body of the draft code, it discusses council relationships and communication, both with each other, during public meetings, outside of public meetings with the public, with staff, and with other government agencies, and what kind of communication is expected. It also addresses a little bit on social media interaction, and that's a very common policy in code of ethics policies that are being written these days. And it basically just says in that regard that you agree and commit that you won't publicly criticize decisions made by the majority, because that's divisive. And if the city council, for example, passes some piece of legislation or takes some action that is not unanimous, and it's a 3-2 vote or a 4-1 vote, and you're on the losing end of that you won't go on social media and blast the majority for the action that they took or be openly critical. Instead, that would be disrespectful of the action that the majority took, and that you would agree that you wouldn't do that. And likewise, you wouldn't use social media to be critical of other council members or staff, because that could create a hostile work environment, and it'd be something that would be very troubling for staff to know that a council member was criticizing them on social media or in the public generally. And so it's just, while that technically is maybe a free speech issue, it's a commitment that you agree that certain kinds of speech like that could be harmful, and you would agree to not participate in it. So this is the draft policy before you. It's rather lengthy. It's 19 pages, and that's my summary of it.
Okay. I think I'm going to talk to each council member, have them each express concerns or what they want to see. So I'll start off with Sabrina.
Sure. Although I respect the intent, and I think an ethics policy is good, I would like to see the council look at several different policies, maybe then potentially form our own ad hoc to discuss what we want in our policy rather than picking somebody else's. I think there's some really good information that's in here. While I do take issue with two elements of this particular ethics policy, one being that I am not willing to vote in favor or foregoing my right to free speech. I think that it's ever important to ensure that there is transparency, and I've received some responses from the community about concerns that, particularly right now during the pandemic, people are feeling like they're left out of government decisions, and some feel that this is a bad time to pass something that restricts any kind of free speech for their elected officials. They want their elected officials to be able to speak freely and keep them informed. So I would propose that we look at that the council themselves look at other options, and we work on this as a council and coming up with our own ethics policy and that it's passed after we can sit and look at each other face to face and the public can weigh in on it. And so I would ask that we revisit it after COVID-19 is over.
Okay, Greta?
I love the idea. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
I love the idea of a code of ethics and conduct. I think it's great, and I think it would be wonderful if the council had an active role in crafting the policy that we felt best would serve our community. I think this is a great start, and I would love to see an ad hoc committee that could work on building something unique for Willits.
Okay. Edge.
Yeah, I basically agree with the comments that were just made. I feel like this is a little, that it's going to require more thought, and I like the idea of seeing more than one sample to look at, and then maybe picking out the best of a couple different examples that we might compare. I don't particularly, I do think council members, and for that matter staff, should be able to speak minds, especially after a decision is made. I think it's okay for a council member to say, you know, I was on the minority on that one and I didn't agree because of da-da-da, but I will, of course, abide by the majority decision as well. But I think if it gets into, you know, any kind of belittling or disparaging of the staff and the other and fellow council members, that's the kind of thing that a code of ethics, I think, should really legitimately address. And so this is really, you know, 90%. I agree with the substance of this, but I think we could take a little more time with it and craft it in a way that we're comfortable with. So I kind of agree with that. I don't think we should wait until COVID is over, because that might be a couple of years. But I think we could probably wait until we have a little bit more effective communications with each other. Maybe will help. It'd be nice if and when we get to the point where we could have a meeting where the public could attend in person and all of that too. But I think we should have at least a month or two to mull this over. Maybe. I thought.
Thank you. Larry, I think that this has a lot of really good parts in it, and I agree. I think that maybe we ought to come up with something ourselves, but I think there's a lot of really good points in this, and I would be really interested in seeing what we come up with. Thank you.
All right. I kind of agree with Madge. I'd like to see some other versions, and I think not always copying somebody else's work. I'll tell you, one of the biggest problems I have with some aspects of social media is civility, but I have that with some folks in general. We've lost our civility sometimes, and I want to be respectful to staff and each other. And when we do the people's work in the people's place, it's out there. And like what Matt just said, I think whether I'm on the losing or winning end, and I just want to come out and say, look, I voted this way for this. If you want to know, this is why. And at this point, we're done. We move on. I think that's the way it's supposed to be, that we discuss something openly, honestly, with the community present, or in this case, hopefully we get a better forum, and then we move on to something else. It's not a personal thing. And that's what we do. So I would like to ask if Madge and Greta would like to serve on an ad hoc. And maybe we could get some stuff from Jim.
I'm willing.
Right.
Sure, I'd be willing to do that. Yeah, I'm willing. One thing that I also do think is worth considering.
Can I weigh in? I'm sorry.
Can I finish my thought? I just wanted to suggest that, we do have 3 council members who are going to be up for re-election, or if they decide to run again. And maybe it might be worth considering waiting until after the election so that we can give new council members an opportunity to help craft a document that is going to help, create a positive atmosphere in the council.
I agree.
I believe there's public that wants to speak, and I think I would very much like to weigh in.
Well, Stephanie, I'll let you talk, and then I'll open up to the public.
Thank you. I have been working on this for a while. I have been with you for over 2 years. And I am very concerned with the tone and tenor of the relationship of council and council's relationship with staff. And a lot of what happens in this council is really not appropriate, nor ethical, nor acceptable. I will say that I have seen things on Facebook about me, written about me, that are flat out lies. And that should never happen. And I think it's time. And the time is now to do something to improve our tenor of our relationship. And I believe that this is a statement that many cities have done, and there are many cities that have been forced to do this by grand juries because of the dysfunction of council. And I really hope that we take it very seriously, because I think that a lot of people don't realize that, especially the public, when we talk about transparency and social media, that once a political discussion happens on social media, it's not supposed to happen outside of a council meeting. And that is happening all the time. And there's an encouragement that, gosh, other council members should weigh in. But that would be a violation of the Brown Act in a meeting outside of this council, and that keeps happening. And I, for one, would like not to be disparaged in public or on Facebook. And I think that rule needs to happen sooner rather than later. And I also believe that the council manager form of government needs to be respected, and that shouldn't take an ethics policy to do, but it needs to be respected. And I ask your indulgence to please pass something that staff is respected and that your fellow council members are respected, because I know that some of them are not on Facebook, and some things are said about them that make me very sad. And that is my word for the day. Thank you for listening.
At this point, I'll open it up to anybody.
This is Karen.
Okay, Karen, go ahead.
I actually wanted to speak as just a member of the community, because I feel compelled to speak as a member of this community in regards to the communications and interactions conducted by some members of this council during council meetings and on social media. The lack of respect, the passive-aggressive and uncivil behavior has become a serious problem. The recent social media post by a council member pushing back on the adoption of aspects in this new Code of Ethics policy leaves me to wonder why. One social media post states, by adopting a Code of Ethics will muzzle the council members and forgo their rights to free speech. Most disturbing to me, the post states that the council members won't be able to criticize members of the council, the staff, or the public, and it's more important for elected officials to speak openly. Note the post did not say disagree with, it said criticize. As was expected, this post elicited some pretty rude and abrasive comments. And although I agree our council members must have the right to share their opinions, people don't always see eye to eye, and there's a way to communicate your opinion without making staff feel like they are being disregarded, disrespected, and demoralized. And in other words, diminishing my light won't make your light shine any brighter. Everyone wants to be heard and feel appreciated. Even though we may not always agree on how to craft the best solutions, we often can agree on the desired outcomes we wish to achieve. Respect is one of the city's core values, and as a council member, you must lead by example and demonstrate acceptable behaviors and attitudes, whether it be in a council meeting, in person, or on social media. The COVID pandemic has devastated our local economy, felt by local business owners and residents alike. 4 months into this, tensions are at an all-time high. This is the time to be supportive of each other, including city staff, in your communications, and I implore you to start fostering a culture of mutual respect and civility now. I request all of you approach each interaction with respect and appreciate the value of diverse opinions. Rude and abrasive discourse serves no purpose. Every effort should be made to show mutual respect for the contributions made by each individual for the good of the community. Clear, honest communication that respects the abilities, experience, and dignity of each individual is expected. Personal attacks of any kind and outright lies toward fellow council members or staff is improper and disrespectful. It is acceptable to publicly disagree about an issue, but it is unacceptable to make derogatory comments about other council members, staff, and their opinions and actions. Doing so may undermine confidence and respect for the City Council as a body. Willits is a small community. Council members are constantly being observed by the community every day they serve in office. Your behaviors and comments serve as models for proper deportment in the city. Honesty and respect for the dignity of each individual should be reflected in the words and actions taken by council members. It all comes down to respect. Respect for one another as individuals, respect for the validity of different opinions, and respect for the community that you serve. Thank you.
Karen, do I have anybody else from the public that would like to speak? Okay. So do I have anybody from the public that wants to speak? Otherwise, I'll close public comment.
Is it appropriate for...
What's that?
Is it appropriate for Jim to discuss what other cities have done?
It would be. I wanted to kind of finish public comment. Do I have any more public comment? Okay, at this point, I'm going to bring it back up here to us. And Jim, did you have any other examples or anything? And I just want to say that I don't want to wait till January when the new council takes place to restart the discussion, even if folks aren't available to serve because they're not on the council anymore. But at least it gets the information to us so that we can have a dialogue. That's how I feel about this stuff. We don't have to.
Well,
okay, so right, Jim.
So there are lots of examples of city code of ethics policies that are out there. I looked at one recently for the city of Belmont. It was very much like the one that you're seeing, but it was pared down to 9 pages. And I'd be happy to try to get together a half a dozen policies and circulate them to the ad hoc members.
And I think that would be really appropriate. And then I would say in a month maybe if our ad hoc could meet and start getting that information from Jim and then give us some updates.
Yeah.
So I think go ahead.
This is Madge. I just wanted to say, I almost think that Karen's speech that she just gave could be our code of ethics. I really appreciated that very much, Karen, and that I think that sort of like the discussion that took place about the health rules is that we really rely on voluntary compliance and buy-in and mutual respect as guideline for our behavior. So one of the things, and I think that's true of a code of ethics, we hopefully don't need, to force it. But I do think we need to address the issue of personal or misleading communications that we have.
This is Sabrina. This is Sabrina. I'd like to make a comment that I find it very disheartening that we were having a conversation as a council about our ethics policy and wanting to look at other examples and respecting that there were certain elements of this particular one that we wanted. And because it appears that the majority wasn't going to vote in favor of this immediately, that it apparently elicited the city manager to call us liars and unethical at a public meeting, and I'm very disheartened by those comments when you're just talking about ethics, and yet here you are making, in my opinion, unethical statements towards the council, and then followed up by other statements. I mean, how is that working cohesively? The council simply asked for more time to put something together that we could have buy-in to that was our own. I mean, I could go on and counter with accusations, but it would be pointless because that's not the spirit of what we're supposed to be doing. I'm just going to say that I'm very disheartened by the things that you just said. Very disappointing.
Well, I want to say that I have read things on Facebook that were not true, that were intended to mislead and that were not true, and that because of my position, I do not get into the political fray, and I do not get on Facebook, and I actually have a code of conduct that I follow. That's why I'm not on Facebook. And that's why when things are said that are not true, I do not respond. However, when in the context of a reason why we need a code of ethics and we need it quickly, is that this is one of the reasons. I would be certainly happy to cite examples, but there are concrete examples of these things happening, and that's why this is so urgent, is that we do have something in place because, as you know, I have decided to leave the city at the end of the year. And it was with heavy heart that I decided to do that because I do love the city. But it has been a difficult decision, and I want to make sure that the next city manager has a chance to actually have a fair, to have an ethical workplace in which to work. And I would like to say that the majority of council has been wonderful. However, I think that there are some conditions that, such as some of the behavior on social media that is not appropriate, and the violations of the council manager form of government that continue to happen. And I do hope that you pass something quickly and do not take it lightly, because I want to make sure that the next city manager is in a position to succeed, and I would going to leave that there. And I don't think anybody should have things untrue said about them. And I certainly have not on social media because I'm not on social media.
Okay, I think it's important. Nobody wants anything untrue said about them, whether it be on social media or face-to-face with other public leaders of the community or to other council members about council members. Nobody wants that. And in doing our ethics policy, I think that to have success with the next city manager, that it shouldn't just be about the ethics policy. We should revisit the council manager form of government and what are the expectations of the council members in regards to what they expect from their city manager. I think it's a long conversation that deserves our time and energy. And so I would urge the council, let me finish please, urge the council to take the time to do this properly.
Okay. Again, I formed the ad hoc on the ethics, and I think that Jim is going to provide the two council members that information, and I hope they'll report back at least on the progress, and we'll go from there. Okay. We have directions to staff, to council. All right. City council, committee, boards, and agencies. Sabrina.
Nothing new to report, thank you.
Okay. Greta.
I attended last Thursday's meeting with Mo Mulveren's group that she's put together with various elected and senior staff from around the county. One of the most interesting things that came out of that discussion was the, at that time, new information from the county that they had received a letter from OptumServe, who provides the COVID testing in Ukiah, that they were not getting full engagement from the public, and they weren't hitting their maximum numbers. And they indicated to the county that they would pull out of Mendocino County and go to a more populated area where they were more likely to make more money and get full capacity. At that time, the county was looking to see if there were any opportunities to send the testing over to the coast, because there were many members of the coastal communities who were saying they found it difficult to get the testing in Ukiah. But it really looks like the request made by Ted Williams and other members of the Board of Supervisors has drawn more interest in getting tested, and so I think as of early this week, they were hitting their full numbers. So for those who are concerned about keeping active testing going in Mendocino County, I just wanted to urge you to go and get your free test. You can sign up on the OptumServe website that's listed on the county. There's also an 800 number you can call. I know that some people have reported glitches on the website. Testing is uncomfortable but not painful, as according to all reports. And it's free. If you have insurance, you will be requested to show your insurance card. If you don't have insurance, it will be paid for by the state. So it's like I said, it's free, and it helps the county assess where the number of cases actually are. It helps assure you that you're safe and not unknowingly spreading illness to your friends and loved ones. And I encourage anybody who's interested to go and do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Greta. That's a good reminder. Matt.
Hey, thank you. I have several agencies that I'm going to report on. The first is that EDFC, the Economic Development Financing Corporation, is meeting tomorrow at 2 o'clock by Zoom. And so anybody who wants to can join that. We will be hearing from our newly appointed general manager, or what is she called, executive director, Barbara Carr. She has been hired as the new director of EDFC, and I think that's the main. And they're also wanting to have jurisdictional updates and work more with the different jurisdictions to make sure that EDFC is responsive to what we out here in the cities would like them to be doing. So if any of you have input to me to bring to the meeting, both to report on what we are doing here in Willits, but also any needs we might identify, please let me know. The Mendocino Solid Waste Management Authority, which is just known as Mendo Recycle, they are meeting a week from tomorrow at 10 in the morning. And again, it's by Zoom, and people are welcome to attend that. I want to announce, if I can find it, I need to make sure I have these all lined up in my computer. I do. Hold on one second. For June 13th, which is this Saturday, So if any households or businesses have hazardous waste they would like to take advantage of solid waste of Middle Recycle being here in Willits on Saturday from 9 in the morning till 1. And items that can be accepted include things like motor oil, antifreeze, solvents, paint and paint thinner, household batteries, toxic cleaners, fluorescent light tubes, PCB containing things, acids, pesticides, herbicides, etc., prescription medications. So they will collect free of charge for the residential community and very low charge for commercial establishments this Saturday. And that's two. And then the third one is I've attended 2 recent Sonoma Clean Power meetings, and they had really packed agendas, and I took some notes. But what I would recommend is that if people are interested in taking advantage of some of their programs, which include things like no interest loans for up to $10,000 for residential customers to do things like battery storage for their solar installations and other things. Please go to Sonoma Clean Power's website. They have an awful lot of programs that could benefit our residents here. And I will try to actually take better notes and report specific things at a future meeting when we have a little more time. But I'm very impressed with what they're offering and with their professionalism and their dedication to trying to reduce our carbon footprint and increase energy efficiency for the environment and for our pocketbooks. So, thank you.
Thank you, Matt. I think that's a good reminder for us to pick up the city yard for folks that want to get rid of some chemicals and things. Larry, I know you attended a meeting for me, amongst other things.
I didn't attend, but I did attend on the phone on the League of California Cities, and Stephanie and I both listened to it, and she gave the spiel on the city of Willits. And the thing that was interesting to me was that most of the cities of League of California Cities, the Redwood Empire Division, were concerned about the second effect of the virus, how it was going to affect, if it happened, how it was going to affect their cities. And I think that was very interesting, and everybody pretty much had the same idea, is that it would be very disheartening to the community to have another virus come through. Anyhow, so much for that. And I also went to MCOG, and you voted on the main topic of the housing part of MCOG, selecting the specific powers to do the housing, and that was the biggest thing going on MCOG. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Larry. I went to LASCO via Zoom, and it actually is a pretty orderly format, and we passed a final budget and work plan for fiscal year 2020-21. I think we kept in mind that, at least for the first 6 months, there'd be no in-person meetings, given that COVID is probably still going to be with us then. And we did a MSR, SOI, Municipal Service Review and Sphere of Influence update for the Mendocino City Community Service District. There were some questions we had, and since it was a workshop, I guess we would continue till August, because we won't have a meeting in July. It's kind of a budget saving that we did. And the only thing that was of interest there is that there's some issues with basically the sewer district wanting to have control over groundwater rights, and so that was discussed there. And that was the gist of LASCO. And then I also attended a League of Cities Public Policy Committee meeting, and Public Safety
policy committee meeting, and we did have some legislation we talked about. There wasn't much happening because of the legislature. The big topic of conversation was obviously the situation involving Mr. Floyd, and we drafted a proposed statement condemning the murder of George Floyd as horrific and tragic, and we came out with a statement that will go to the full membership. But I think there was generally consensus, it wasn't unanimous, but generally consensus that something had to come out now versus later. So that was, and I guess, unless there's anything else, I guess we'd be council member reports and recommendations. So I'll start off with Sabrina.
Nothing to report.
All right, Greta?
Nothing here.
All right. Madge?
Nothing here either.
All right. Larry?
Nothing here, please.
You know, I just want to go on record as we discussed a lot of things today, and in the end, I can remain civil with each other and with staff, and that the other thing, I did reach out to a lot of folks who contacted me via email, and some left voicemail. I mean, people, I think I try to get across to folks, if you call and leave me a voicemail, it sends me an email, and I usually can respond usually within the same day. Some folks, they were surprised I called them back and listened to what they had to say, and COVID does make it a little harder to get a hold of folks, but I'm trying my part, and so I thank folks for being involved and speaking up. Whether in fact it's the way I was going to vote or not, I told them that I wanted to listen to what they had to say, and that's part of that whole engaging the public. And I think you all know the value of that. I wanted to go on record of thanking everybody that spoke tonight and sent us emails, but that's how your government works. And you may not always agree with us. Maybe you do sometimes, but I appreciate folks coming forward and speaking. So, any good and welfare? Okay. I guess I'll just say one thing.
I have a good and
thank you.
I have a good and welfare. This is Greta, and I just wanted to say that last week I had an unpleasant interaction and with a member of the community that made me feel unsafe, and I was forced to call Willits PD, and I just wanted to say that both Mike and Rebecca were incredible to talk to and made me feel like I was in good hands. So shout out to our dispatchers.
All right, and I think I was starting to say again to congratulate all the graduates, and both we have some college graduates and some, my wife teaches kindergarten, so I know we have some kindergarten graduates. I know that's important for some folks there, and shout out, and we have no closed session, so at this point I guess we can move to adjournment. And thank you, everybody.